Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press, and from listeners like you. This week, help support the work of Central Valley Daily and KVPR by becoming a monthly member. Join at $8 a month or more and access ad-free NPR podcasts through NPR Plus. Give now at kvpr.org/donate or by clicking the donate button on the KVPR app.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Wednesday, December 11th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Over 1 million acres of land in the Sierra Nevada could become a national monument.
This is a really special place where we can create an integrated migratory corridor and a lovely place for people to recreate.
But many of the people who live in the proposed area are opposed to the idea. We'll hear from one woman leading the charge for the monument, but first, today's headlines. Former Valley Congressman T.J. Cox is due in court later today. He's scheduled for a plea hearing related to federal charges of fraud and money laundering. It's unclear if he's arranged a plea deal with prosecutors. His attorney has suggested Cox could instead seek a trial. Cox served one term in Congress after unseating Republican David Valadao. Cox was later charged with 28 counts of financial crimes. A union representing Fresno employees has rejected a contract offered by city leaders and has voted to strike. The City of Fresno Professional Employees Association represents roughly 400 supervisors among city staff. In a statement, the city responded by saying its contract offers were fair and competitive. City Manager Georgianne White wrote that she's disappointed by the vote's outcome. Meanwhile, a strike date has not been set. Depression and anxiety are on the rise among young people. Cap Radio's Megan Myskowski reports a new California bill aims to bring that down by putting a warning label on social media.
The bill would require social media platforms to show the label when a person signs up for an account, and then again once a week. Democratic East Bay Assembly member Rebecca Bauer-Cahan is the bill's author.
The attention economy is using our children and their well-being to make money for these California companies.
The U.S. Surgeon General released a report last year saying that adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media have twice the risk of poor mental health outcomes as kids who spend less than that online. The Surgeon General also called for national lawmakers to require a warning on social media. Ash Johnson is with the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, a think tank supported by major tech companies. She says people already tend to click through pop-ups like the ones that ask if you're okay with the website collecting your data.
I kind of expect something like a warning label for certain types of websites like social media to have a similar effect where most people will not pay that much attention to them.
She also says if the bill becomes law, companies will likely show the labels to everyone, not just Californians. In Sacramento, I'm Megan Myskowski.
More than 100 ineligible voters were mistakenly allowed to vote in a Kern County School District election. That's according to a lawsuit from Greenfield Union School District. Kern County leaders are now working to fix the ballot mishap, which occurred in a race for school district trustee. The margin of victory in the race was only 8 votes. A county elections representative told KVPR the county and school district are discussing legal avenues to fix the mistake.
Support for Central Valley Daily comes from Fresno Mazda, part of the Prieto Automotive family, with special holiday financing deals on select models through the end of the year at the new showroom on Blackstone and Barstow. Information at myfresnomazda.com.
And now to our main story. Scores of people turned out this week in Clovis for a town hall over a proposed national monument in the Sierra Nevada. It would be called the Range of Light National Monument, and it would cover more than 1 million acres of land. However, many residents and groups are opposed to this idea. An online petition in opposition has gathered over 12,000 signatures. Opponents of the proposal to designate the land as a monument say it would not protect the land and instead would cut off access for activities like off-roading and horseback riding. Marcus Magnus is with the Clovis Independent Four-Wheel Drive Club. He says the monument would hamstring local businesses.
It's just not the right decision for us, and it's not the right decision for our community. Economically, it's going to be devastating.
To get some more perspective on the monument proposal, I recently spoke with Deanna Lynn Wolf. She's the executive director of the nonprofit Unite the Parks. They're the group leading the charge to designate the land as a national monument. In my conversation with Wolf, she laid out for me which specific part of the Sierra would be included in the Range of Light National Monument.
So the monument is located between Yosemite and Sequoia Kings Canyon. So it's also in the center of the longest interconnected wilderness in the lower 48. So this is a really special place where we can create an integrated migratory corridor and a lovely place for people to recreate. But it's large, right? It's 1.4 million acres. So that's about twice as big as Yosemite, for context. And it's essentially the entire Sierra National Forest, and a little portion is the San Joaquin Gorge. And the idea is to just convert it all, connect the parks, and create a wonderful place for people to be.
And why do you think having this land under national monument status is necessary?
Oh, I think it's super important, actually. I know a lot of people are worried about this change, right? Like there's a lot of kind of blowback right now, but they should be more concerned about the status quo, because the current land manager is the Forest Service, and the Forest Service is mostly serving corporations. So the agency is required to commercially log. That means they're building roads at taxpayer expenses and marking trees, and then selling the largest, most fire resilient trees for like $5 or $6 a tree, like very cheap, like a tree that took, hundreds of years to grow is sold for like, a cup of coffee. And so what this is doing is it's dismantling the forest ecosystem. It's making the area more likely to burn. And then on top of that, there's not much of an economic future in that anymore. So only 10% of this landscape is available for commercial logging. So that means those trees have a really important role. They're necessary for the forest ecosystem, but there just isn't even a future in doing that. So the idea with the monument is to say, we know this isn't working. You can see there's been giant fires all over the forest ecosystem, including the creek fire. And instead, let's restore the ecosystem. Let's put people to work restoring the ecosystem, and let's make trails happen again. And there's so much work to do. So we know that's good for the environment, and we know that it's good for the economy. So, it's a win-win.
Now, with this proposal, there has been a lot of criticism from people living in the Sierra National Forest, with some saying the proposal would be governmental overreach. They say it would hamper their ability to do recreational activities in the area, such as riding ATVs or hunting. Do you have a response to those criticisms?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the earlier statement I made that this landscape is already managed for corporate profit. It's not managed for people and wildlife. It doesn't have an economic future, based on the current approach. So instead of having the management agency work against people's interests, what we want is the management agency to work for them, right? Which is to provide the jobs, to get people out into the landscape. And then in regards to, people's concerns, like we built into the bill, like, you definitely have access to your private property. You're going to be able to keep your cabin leases. There's all these things, they're called carve-outs that are built into the bill to maintain like most of the recreational access to this landscape. Not all, because some of these recreational users are destructive, right? And so and for those users, like, it's not a great thing for them, but that's not most people. And you're not going to make everybody happy when you try to do something like this. There's just no way. So I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to do something that serves the majority of people.
Your organization, Unite the Parks, is reportedly calling on President Biden to sign an act to protect the land. Is that what it would take for this to become a national monument?
There are two ways for a monument to happen. And one could be that the president signs a proclamation, right? That's less secure, right? Because we know that as we have this administration change, that Trump may come along and dismantle it, right? And then that's another battle. There's also legislation, so a congressperson could introduce a bill or get a bill passed somehow in this last window of time, and that it could happen that way too. But our window of time is just getting more and more narrow. So with Congress, we only have till, I think, December 20th, and then with the president, you have till January, I think, 20th or something like that. So those are very tight windows of time, but you can do one or the other.
And how does former President Trump reassuming office in January affect this effort?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, right? I think most environmentalists are pretty worried about that. And I'm concerned about it as well. But if we get really solid legislation passed, either with Congress or with a presidential proclamation, we have a battle of protecting it. And that's the next thing that we'll do. So I think we just have to accept what we have and go forward. And I also think that, we got Trump because people feel abandoned by the system. And I get it. I mean, that's why I worked really hard to have the bill do the things it does, right? But, I think people's feelings are important. And in this regard, they've spoken pretty clearly that they want change and they want to have the government serve their interests. So I think this does that, but I have to be able to get it done in the next 2 months, or it might be a long time.
That was my conversation with Deanna Lynn Wolf. Her nonprofit, Unite the Parks, is leading the charge to have over 1 million acres of land in the Sierra Nevada designated as a national monument. President Joe Biden and Governor Gavin Newsom have not weighed in on the proposal. In October, 52 California state legislators wrote Newsom, saying he should pressure Biden to establish the monument. Among those were Fresno area Assemblymember Joaquin Arambula and Merced area State Senator Ana Caballero. And that does it for today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
We could all use a little help navigating the news these days. The Consider This podcast wants to give you a hand. 6 days a week, we'll help you make sense of the day's biggest news story and what it means for you in less than 15 minutes. Listen now to the Consider This podcast from NPR.